Well, hello and welcome back to the Alliance Against Seclusion Restraint live series. My name is Guy Stevens. I am the founder and executive director of the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint. I am also the host for the podcast. There's actually a lot of other things I do too, but we'll stop it there. Happy to have you here with us today live, and we've got a great guest in store for you today. I've got Sam Shepard who's going to be joining us, and we'll be meeting Sam here shortly. But before I dive in and get started, I just want to begin by sharing a little bit about who we are and what we do. I know that many of you that join us week after week and for our podcast have been members of our community for a long time, and I really appreciate you. Really appreciate your involvement. But for those of you that might be joining us for the first time or have heard about us recently, the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint is a small Maryland-based national nonprofit. We do a lot of work around restraint and seclusion, of course, but it's really about reducing and eliminating punitive and exclusionary discipline, moving away from outdated behavior management approaches, trying to end the school to prison pipeline, and helping to ensure better outcomes for children, for teachers, for staff, for families and communities. Always a pleasure to have you here with us today. And we've got, again, a good show in store for you. Before I get to our main topic today, a couple of quick announcements. One, we're in November. It's mid-November already. We're getting towards the end of the year here. And very shortly, if you've not already started hearing, you probably started hearing a lot of appeals for things like Giving Tuesday and supporting organizations and those doing work that those doing work that's important. And of course, the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint is no different. We are always looking for support. As a small nonprofit, we really rely on support from donations and some of the work that we do related to other types of funding as well. But I just want to take a quick moment and encourage you, if you're a member of our community, to consider joining the Alliance. And I'll tell you more about what that means in a moment. But if you go to the Alliance website, which is endseclusion.org, if it's your first time there, you might see this banner that says Join the Alliance. And if you do, you can click on that link and it will tell you how to join. If you don't see that, you can actually go under Take Action and Join the Alliance. And when you click on that, it tells you about what it means to join the Alliance. And we have really a membership program where people that support the work that we're doing, you can join as a supporter for just $5 a month or an advocate for $25 a month. We have several different options. We also have volunteer opportunities, sponsorships. If you run an organization or business that's related to what we're doing here, you want to become a sponsor, we'll actually share your ad on our podcast. That's something you can do as well. But when you become a member, what you're doing is you're supporting our work. You're helping us to bring this podcast to you. You're helping us to do things to support families that are in need or work with and support educators. So really important. And again, you can come to the website, learn more about that. There's different levels starting from just $5 a month. One of the things I've been doing recently is people join. I'll send you one of our cool 5 principles stickers, and it's a great way to kind of spread the word about what we're doing. So anyway, just want to encourage you, if you're able, to think about how you might support us and encourage you to join the Alliance and help us do the work that we are trying to do. So with that, let me go ahead and bring up our guest today. It's always exciting to have a special guest joining us, and today is no exception to that. I've got Sam Shepard joining us here, and Sam is the founder of 3DA, which is a nonprofit that advocates for individuals with developmental disabilities across the country. 3DA focuses on providing accessible resources on their website, which is 3da.org. That's a nice, easy website to remember, as well as advocating at both the state and federal level for change. I had the privilege of meeting Sam some time ago. I think we've known each other for a little while now, probably not long after you started your organization. And we've had a chance to get to know the work that you're doing, and really appreciate learning more about what it is that you're doing. And I know today we plan on talking a little bit about your work related to assistive technology. So it's always exciting to have you here, Sam. So Sam, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Guy, for having me. It's always great having the chance to talk to you, whether it's obviously this is the first time live, but even, all of our prior conversations, they're always great to have. So appreciate your time as always.
Likewise, always a pleasure. And I want to let people know, if you're watching live right now, I didn't say this before, but I'm going to say this every time. It's always great to know who's joining us, where you're joining us from. So I encourage you, if you're watching live right now, let us know in the chat if you can, if you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, you can put a comment there. Let us know who you are and where you're from. It's always a lot of fun. Sam, we find actually that we have people sometimes join us from all over the world. So it's a lot of fun to say, oh gosh, we have people live watching in Australia or New Zealand or wherever they may be. And in fact, it's so frequent that I know we record this right now, it's actually already Friday there in New Zealand and Australia, and very early in the morning. So
Mhm.
good to have people that kind of come back over and over again. So again, let us know in the chat who you are and where you're from, and Sam and I are going to go ahead and get started with our conversation. And Sam, I wonder if you would, for those that may not be familiar with your organization, 3DA, if you talk a little bit about your organization, what it is, why you started it, and tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I forget, it's funny you mentioned Australia and New Zealand, because I was actually just on a call, I think about 2 days ago, with some people in Australia with the AT organization. And it was 4 o'clock my time, and it was, I want to say, 9 or 10 a.m. their time the next day. So it's always, it just made me think of that because it's very recently.
Yeah. Now, you said AT organization. I'm going to guess you're talking assistive technology, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, and yeah, just a reminder, it's helpful because sometimes we start talking in acronyms and it's like
I know.
AT is so that's great. Yeah, well, we have already had a couple of people that have jumped in and said hello here. Someone here, my son uses an AAC, and it was a huge fight. Okay, from Massachusetts. I've got Andy joining us here from St. Paul, Minnesota. We've got Devin joining us from Connecticut. Looking forward to the discussion. Christina Keller saying hello from Cleveland, Ohio. And Rebecca joining us from Twin Cities, Minnesota. So we already have a number of people who have jumped on live, and hopefully one of our Australian or New Zealand friends will jump on too. So, I could say, look, see, we really do reach around the world. So anyway, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your organization, why you started it, and kind of what you focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. So 3DA, as you kind of said, we are a nonprofit that advocates for people with developmental disabilities. And our two priorities are legal rights and assistive technology. Obviously, we talk about more of the assistive technology side today, but on the legal rights side, it's important just to have resources and advocacy for special education, self-advocacy. We have a lot of information on like past court cases and laws and current events, that kind of stuff. And on the assistive technology side, obviously trying to be as resourceful as possible with assistive technology, or AT, I guess, to remind, if I do say AT, I'm talking about assistive technology. Please remind me if I keep rambling, but just saying AT. But yeah, it's really about having resources about AT, not just for general public awareness, but to have people help people meet their AT needs. Maybe they'll find an article or a video that we have on our website useful, and I could use something in this realm for myself or for my kid or someone I work with, that kind of thing. And another part of what we do is just pushing for more assistive technology policy. We had our first bill here in Arizona earlier in the year that really pushed for technology first and stuff like that. And trying to expand the work. We had to run the bill again next year here, unfortunately, but running it back, trying to make sure it runs smoother than this year. And we also have a bill that's very similar in New Hampshire as well, kind of for the same thing with technology first. And I feel like I need to take a few steps back because I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here.
Sure. You're fine. Well, actually, let me take a step back. And before I do, just share a couple other hellos here. We have somebody joining us here from the UK, somebody else here from Nicole from New Jersey. So again, great to have more people joining us. But let's take a further step back before we go forward, getting more into the assistive technology realm of things. So tell me about, forming this organization, 3DA. What led you to, deciding that you wanted to do this kind of work, and what led to the formation of the organization? Tell me a little bit more about your story and kind of what brought you to where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Minnesota, so it's great seeing some people from the Twin Cities on here. But from small town Hastings, Minnesota, I went to college at the University of Minnesota Duluth. It's right on Lake Superior. It's very cold. One of the reasons I moved to Arizona after college. But no, Duluth was a great experience. I was a part of the student government there, and that really taught me what advocacy was. And, I was fortunate enough to have the chance to meet with a lot of like administrators, faculty, staff. I can think of countless stories in my head right now, running meetings with all the deans, the university and stuff like that. But during my first summer off of school, I actually got a job at FedEx. I just needed some type of summer job. And, about 3 weeks in, I'm just like, I do not like this job. And I wasn't good at it either. Like anything that requires like fast hands, I'm just not good at it. And so I just went on Google and searched for, jobs near me, and the first one that popped up was Customized Options nonprofit, and they're a day service for adults with developmental disabilities. And I got the job there. It was very new to me being in the field. And the biggest thing too was not only that, but hearing a lot of the horror stories that happened to people that we served, whether it was abuse, neglect, exploitation, just thinking at the moment there was one individual, just a super, thin, older gentleman, the nicest person I've ever met. And, he was in his, I want to say 60s or 70s. And he would have bruising on his legs from his group home staff and a lot of other horrible things that would happen to him. And there was a couple of days, I didn't work with him that directly that often, but there was one day in particular I remember where he asked if he had been good that day. Something that that was very appalling, because he, as I said, was one of the nicest people. And the fact that someone in their 70s has to be put in a position to ask if they've been good, regardless of age, I guess. But that was one story in particular. I don't want to share all of them, obviously, but those things made me want to do something about it, and I didn't know what. And as I kind of touched on being involved with student government, my sophomore and junior year, I definitely got more and more involved where some of those more heightened experience happened, meeting with more administrators and the chancellor and things like that. And just working at this job more, I wanted to do something. I just didn't know what. I guess I was stuck in that funk of, figuring it out in college, I guess you could say. And so COVID hit 2020. I graduated December of 2020. So that fall was my final semester. I was working as a direct support professional, but this time it was at a group home just in my hometown. And just seeing how well that group home was ran compared to the group home, kind of the story I just shared, as well as other stories that I could share. That's really where the idea of 3DA came. And it wasn't, a night and day. The next day we had all this assistive technology stuff going and stuff like that. But it was really about, forming a board, figuring out our priorities. Even once we were founded in January of 2022, we didn't have the clear priorities, the clear vision, mission, things of that nature that we do now. And really how assistive technology came into play was just a board meeting. One of our board members, actually my boss at the nonprofit I worked at before, Barb, she had talked about I believe it was a companion robot in Europe, or some company that was doing companion robots that she had heard about. And it was just a simple discussion. And our board chair, Raul, mentioned like, oh, this technology could be one of our priorities. And it over time just became our main thing, I guess, for lack of better term. But yeah, that's a long story short, I guess, on how 3DA came.
Yeah. Well, no, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I mean, it's interesting, to kind of go from, college to getting a job to working in direct support. But, I mean, to be kind of blunt about it, I mean, not many young people, get a job and think, I want to go start a nonprofit. I mean, to be honest with you, like I didn't think before I started the Alliance, I wanted to start a nonprofit, but it's kind of where life led me. But, I think that experience that you had kind of driving you to realize like, hey, there might be something we can do to make a change in the world to help people, I think is a really compelling story. And, from there, I know, the nonprofit began to form and you began to think about some of your priorities. So why don't you tell me a little bit more about kind of the assistive technology piece and why that's so critical to you and the kind of work that you're doing. And I'd love to hear more as well. I don't want to put too much on your plate at once, but more as well about the legislation. But why don't we start out with the basics right now about, how that really became a priority of yours and why that's so important to the work that you're doing today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So it was probably 2 years ago where that board meeting discussion came about that I had mentioned. At the time, I had on our board meeting agendas, I would have like an open discussion kind of just thing in case anyone wants to share anything they've seen. Actually, I'm to correct myself. It was like a what did I call it? It was something related to like trends in the field or something that I had where it wasn't really required for people to say, "Oh, I found this and this," but sometimes people just share, like at Barbara shared about the robots. So that was kind of an open slot for that at the time, and it was very helpful because obviously that became a priority. But really, with assistive technology, it just took time to research into, and how it became a legislative piece was, I want to say,
But let me pause you for a second before you get into the
okay,
legislative piece.
okay.
Um, so we've got a broad audience. A lot of people that are part of our audience probably have a pretty good idea of what we mean when we talk about assistive technology. But for those that may not, can you talk a little bit about what you mean when you say assistive technology, and kind of give us the 101 overview of assistive technology, if you would.
Absolutely. So it's really gonna be any like item or software that's gonna support someone. Give them better. I'm spacing on the words right now, but give them better functionality in whatever task they need help with. So it could be AI software. I guess that's a really easy one to use right now. Or it could be a wheelchair. It could be a cane. It could be any of those kind of things. I wish I had the IDA definition stuck in my head because that's the best definition, but I don't.
Sure, sure. No,
But
as soon as somebody puts you on the spot, but I mean, we think a lot about things like AAC, communication, things that can be used for communication. But there's really a whole universe of things that can be assistive technologies. They're really, things that are helpful to people in doing, everyday important and critical everyday, task and things that allowing people to communicate and things like that, right? So, um,
mm,
yeah. Any other examples that you can think of off the top of your head, or?
another one could be remote supports. I'll dive into that probably later. I don't want
Okay.
that's too dense of a topic right now to to
Okay,
dive
sure, sure,
into.
sure.
That's definitely one. Um, Geez, I'm spacing out now.
Yeah,
With that.
but really ways of I mean, one of the things that we talk about a lot in our work is that a lot of the work is how do you remove barriers and better better enable people to meet their own individual goals and needs. And it's all about there are things out there are technologies out there that people can use that will help them to accomplish the things that they're trying to accomplish, and whether it be communication or mobility or whatever it may be. There's just a whole list of things that kind of fall under that. It's really easy. We often, again, think about things like, communication, like AAC devices, augmented alternative communication devices, and things like that. But there really is a whole world of things that can be assistive and being supportive of people, kind of, living and thriving in their communities. So how did that really become? I mean, I know about the meeting, but as you took a deeper dive into all of that, how did you really become to realize like this is really important and we need to make sure like that people have access to these things? So I'm assuming that's part of what drove some of the legislative efforts. So tell me a
Mhm.
little bit more about that, and if you would, then maybe dive into some of the legislative pieces around this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was fall of 2023. I just started reaching out. I mean, for regardless of specific area, I'd reach out to different organizations to learn about what they're doing, if there's any possibility of working together. Nowadays, when I do that, there is more like direction and action with it. I think at that time it was more so just general inquiries, just trying to learn more.
And
So
I think that's how we connected. I mean, I think at one point you
yeah,
had reached
yeah.
out and we had a meeting, and I know, yeah, you had written something related to kind of restraint and seclusion, as I recall, and what we were doing. But I think we kind of met through one of those conversations.
Exactly. So I was doing this. I reached out to a couple of assistive technology companies, and then there was one, I want to say early 2024, I'd connected with, and that's where I first heard about technology first. And to kind of define that, that's really a state by state initiative slash framework that you know better looks at how to use technological solutions before other options when supporting people with developmental disabilities. And the main importance of technology first, or tech first, if I refer to it as that, that's what I mean. Um, but the main part is just independence. And that's obviously what the epitome of assistive technology is too, is to give someone more independence. Another area where technology first is very beneficial is helping with caregiver or staffing shortages or burnouts, depending on the situation. And then the other part is that it's going to be cost effective using technological solutions versus just relying on, whether it's caregivers or, staff. And obviously, you probably know too how there's just a staffing shortage with DSPs and those kind of similar roles nationwide. Obviously, severity depending on the state itself. But that's just one way how technology first can be. That's kind of the benefits of technology first. And it really varies by state. With Ohio, they're very literal about the term technology first, where in their state policies, every person with a developmental disability that has a individualized service plan or ISP. Sorry, I'm just throwing all these acronyms out.
I appreciate you pausing and
oh my God, I just stopped myself. But every individual with the individualized service plan in Ohio has to be considered for remote supports. And remote supports is generally how it could be sensors. They try to refrain from cameras, I know in most instances, but it could be sensors set up in someone's home to kind of monitor what the person is, if there's, I guess an example would be if they're getting up in the middle of the night, like there'd be a staff that could call in and check why are they like in the middle of the night getting up, or it can help with like wandering too if people want to wander in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. Or if they're just doing irregular things at irregular times, that there's a central center or hub where they're able to kind of monitor these or check in on different individuals depending on if the sensors trigger or whatever else alerts go off with that. And a big part of remote supports is and obviously it's not for everyone, but in some instances it could replace having an overnight staff that might be asleep on the clock anyways. So things like that is what it can do. But I guess to kind of back up, that's just one thing Ohio kind of, they directly mean technology first in terms of they have to look at that before other options. Not like everyone's using remote supports, but they have to at least consider it.
Yeah. And I mean, I would think that part of the, part of the goal with that is really supporting more independence as well. So rather than requiring, staff, if the technology is able to help you live more independently and reach the goals that you might have, I would think that would be a big part of something like, kind of remote, remote supports is really providing a greater level of independence for people with disabilities as well.
Exactly. And that's just one example of technology first being implemented. I know in some places they think that's all it is, which is it's definitely more than that. It's really looking at any technological solution. A big part of this is waivers. And with Medicaid, the state Medicaid program has to basically design the strategy and the plan for the waiver and then get it approved through the CMS at the federal level. And that's kind of where the remote supports comes into play, is having a waiver specifically for remote supports or other assistive technologies where they're actually able to use the funding for the remote supports. Otherwise, it's either an out-of-pocket expense or it's just not happening.
So in theory, and I'm just asking this, but in theory, are looking at assistive technologies, looking at remote support, is this a way to reduce costs while increasing independence? I mean, would that be a hopeful goal of it? I mean, and yes, obviously, okay.
Yeah, it's definitely the intention is independence, cost effectiveness, and then it also can help with the DSP turnover or caregiver burnout as well.
Gotcha. So tell me a little bit more. You've talked about how assistive technology is a big focus of 3DA, and you were talking a little bit about kind of this idea around remote supports. But tell me a little bit more about the legislation. You mentioned that different states have different laws, and of course this is the challenge here, right? There's a lot of different laws, but what kind of laws have you been advocating for? Because you mentioned the legislation there in Arizona, and you mentioned I think another state as well. What kind of things are you advocating for legislatively?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was kind of explaining how I learned about technology first, and then kind of just describe what it is. But really, last fall I was meeting with some people, or where was it? It was the Developmental Disability Advisory Council. This is I'm now a sitting member on it, but before I would go to the meetings regularly, bi-monthly, just as a guest. They're open to the public, so I would go to those, and I just asked everyone during the call. There's always like a call to the public part of this agenda where anyone is able to just ask questions and stuff like that. So I just asked if anyone was aware of or doing anything about Technology First here in Arizona, and on the State of the States website, under Kansas University, they have like a graph that kind of shows who's doing what, and Arizona looked like there was nothing. So I just wanted to confirm that. And it was kind of crickets when I asked about it. And then I had also connected with the Arizona's Assistive Technology Program Director earlier in the year, and I had reached out to him again where I asked the same thing, like, hey, is there anything going on with Technology First? And he said, like, no, but like we want to support it, like we want it to happen, basically. So then come a couple weeks later, I kind of had that, a moment where I'm like, well, I'm just gonna like try to make it happen right now by legislation. And a lot of states, not all states, you can definitely do things without the policy side to begin, but a lot of the states will create a Technology First task force, which will help like implement technology first, the strategies for it, kind of like the waivers, or if there's administrative code that needs to be adjusted, or if there's any state statutes that need to be adjusted, or who's going to kind of house the initiative, oversee the initiative. Those kind of questions get asked and answered through the task force. And the first task force was created in Ohio in 2018 by executive order from the governor. And then in Minnesota, I don't know if they were the second one that made a task force, second state. I don't think they were. They might have been the third or fourth. But they made a task force by legislation in 2019. And so a lot of what I did was kind of modeled from what Minnesota had done legislatively, obviously formatted to Arizona's formatting, because all the states have different statute formats.
So again, what was the goal of that Arizona legislation?
It was to create a Technology First task force.
Okay. And was that successful?
So we got it past the House. I guess to backtrack too. So what I had originally drafted it as Technology First Task Force. However, when the policy staff person, once I found a sponsor and they gave it to the policy staff, they kind of retool. The title got changed to Assistive Technology Study Committee, which wasn't what I had hoped for. But it still had Technology First included in the bill itself with what we were going to do. But to answer the question, we got it passed, got through the committees, got it past the House 40-17, which is really cool. I was there that day it passed. Probably the highlight of the year was seeing that pass the House, at least. And then basically what happened is it got halted from like going into the Senate. Like the Senate chairs just kind of, because the chair for each chamber decide, or each committee in each chamber gets to decide basically what bill to accept and not accept. Right. Basically, since the bill was sponsored by one person who happened to be Democrat, and the Republicans had the majority in the Senate. They also had it in the House too, but in the Senate as well, all the chairs basically blocked it. And the Senate president down here just has a like super like, I guess, strong hate for like task forces and study committees and things like that.
Gotcha.
But I'm like, I just want to be clear too, like 3DA, we're nonpartisan. I'm independent personally, like party politics kind of sucks.
Right. Yeah. And I just want to pop this up real quick. Somebody asked if they can ask questions, and the short answer is yes. If you're watching live and you have questions or comments, you're free to put them in the chat at any time, and we'll try to get through those as we're able. But so Sam, was this your first stab at trying to suggest and introduce a piece of legislation?
Yes, this was the first time I'd been involved in anything legislatively. The only other experience I had at a Capitol before was in college. When I was in student government, we'd go like lobby at the Minnesota Capitol for more university funding. There was also a great chance that opportunity I had to shadow my aunt uncle's local legislator as well
Yeah.
for his
Yeah.
state. I was in
Yeah.
college.
So,
But yeah,
so
first actual
yeah.
effort. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, truth be told, I mean, you did an amazing job, and considering that was the first time that you've done something like this, you did an amazing job of getting something that passed one of the one of the houses there. I mean, that's fantastic. I've often heard that it can take you up to 3 years to get a good bill passed. It's hard. These processes aren't always designed to be efficient in terms of, you introduce a bill and it gets passed. Sometimes it's about building, sometimes it's about, you know, building the capacity and building the people that are going to support it, and learning from what you do one time to come back and do something different the next time. So it's a tough process, but you also, just in doing that, I think it's a really good lesson, because I think a lot of people don't realize. I didn't realize until I found myself advocating for statewide legislation, and I'm quite a bit older than you are, unfortunately, and but I was quite a bit older when I realized, oh gosh, I can go talk to a state lawmaker and they actually care about what I have to say, and we worked with others across the state of Maryland to get changes in the legislation regarding the use of restraint and seclusion, but that was my first kind of dive into that world, and the truth of the matter is, your state lawmakers, your state representatives are there to represent you, and we'll meet with you and we'll hear what you have to say. And if you can find the right lawmaker who believes in the things that you believe are important, you can often find somebody that's willing to put forward a bill. Now, that said, once that bill moves forward, there's a point where you have a certain amount of ownership. You might have written a draft and then you hand it off, and at some point it goes off to drafters and they might use different language or change some of the wording. Like, you lose a little bit of control, it becomes their bill. But at the same time, there is a real process there, and it's important. I mean, if people engage in that, that's how change happens. And I'll tell you, change at the state level is much more accessible than change at the federal level. Getting a bill through the federal government can be really, really difficult. But again, your state lawmakers, they are there to serve and support people, and it really is a good process. So I'm sure you learned a lot just in that first that first intervention that you had. But let me pause for a second. We have a couple of questions that have popped up here, so let me get to these and then we'll continue on. Do you have a long-term financial sustainability plan, endowment, partnerships? So I'll let you answer that, and I can answer for myself as well, because I would love to have an endowment. We don't at the Alliance. Being a small nonprofit is not an easy thing, and finding the funding that you need to do the work that you need can be really difficult. Applying for grants and looking for donations. But in terms of 3DA, can you do you guys have a long-term financial sustainability plan? Do you have partnerships or an endowment or any of that supporting your work?
Yeah, so we don't have like an endowment or like any sponsors that kind of, or like financial sponsors, I guess that is. We do have like some individual donors, mostly like family and friends. We also don't have a lot of like the expenses. We don't have any paid staff at the moment. I still work at a restaurant full time while getting 3D off the ground. But we also recently started a membership program that either goes for $250 a year or $1,000 a year. That's just to help get, not just donors, but get people involved with the work that we do with 3DA, whether it be volunteering or just, part of our, I don't want to say community because that term is very overused in nonprofit space, but, just being a part of 3DA, I guess, just for lack of.
Right. Got another question or comment here from Andy. Do you worry at all that technology first makes it harder for people who may benefit from relationship-based supports than technology-based supports? So that's a great question. Certainly there may be some benefits to some of the technologies that are out there in terms of supporting people's individual needs and their, supporting them being able to do the things that they want to do. But I think this is a really good question, that there may be people that aren't going to benefit as much from technology as they would from another human being. So do you have any concerns about that?
Well, since technology first is really a person by person basis, I'm not going to say it's not a concern, but it definitely isn't I don't think it's the strongest concern. It's not like everyone's just going to, someone that wants or needs technological supports of some sort is just going to be like given all this stuff and just isolated from everyone. I obviously understand the concern. I've definitely heard that before as well, in terms of like, oh, well, more tech lead to isolation and stuff like that, which
Mm-hmm.
depends on the circumstance. But I definitely think that question is always important to ask, but I don't think it's like a super large concern in terms of the entire scope of technology first.
Gotcha. It's an interesting world that we're in right now. And, I was listening to a podcast on my way in this morning and some discussion about artificial intelligence. And, there's a lot that's happening right now. And, I'm sure that there are a lot of things that will lead to tremendous, breakthroughs and, things that may improve people's lives. But there's also that counterweight of things that, may have good intentions that don't serve things as well. So, I mean, it's always, kind of figuring out what that balance is. I think that's a great question, Andy. Certainly, it's something I think we have to be mindful of, with any, new technology or evolving technology. Sometimes the technology gets ahead of kind of really the thoughts about, like ethics and, how it may support people's needs. And so sometimes I imagine there's a point where you want to move in a direction, but you got to slow down a little bit and really explore the impact. So
Mm-hmm.
great question. That legislative piece, of course, you move forward. It didn't go through. So I know what that means. What that means is you go back and you say, okay, well, where did we end up? What do we need to move forward? And you often try to get the bill moving again in the next session if you can. Do you have plans along those lines, or what are your plans to continue to try to advocate for that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, the plan is to rerun the bill next year. We're still finalizing those exact details of that bill. We obviously have a little bit of time on our side this year. It's funny because last year I remember I drafted the bill like the first week of January, and I somehow got my local representative to respond to me and support it and be the sponsor and get it as far as we did. Almost like a kind of like turning in your homework at 11:58.
Mm-hmm.
Almost with getting, I mean, not that tight of a deadline because there was once, at least in Arizona, once the session starts, it's not until like the, I want to say second or third week until the bill like shut off is for so many bills. But it was still pretty last minute in terms of how far we got. And
Mm-hmm.
part of that this year is preparing just a lot of the little things that I wish I would have done more, like getting more stakeholder feedback on things or having more people give testimony in committee, because I was the only one that gave a testimony in committee about the bill. But now it's like, let's get some AT users involved. Let's get people that work in the field involved with it to talk about the importance of tech first.
Yeah. Tell me more about that, because that's exactly where my brain was going. I want to ask you is,
Mm-hmm.
how do you involve people, at the organization at 3DA, when you're working on things like this? How do you involve people with lived experience? How do you involve, individuals with disabilities? How do you involve, people that are using assistive technologies? I often am known to say that, when it comes to, things like this, when it comes to legislation, um, you know, you or I can go and we can advocate for a bill, and that can be really helpful. But I think the voice of lived experience is always the most important voice in the room. Having people that have that experience, and that may be kind of a goal for the second go round with this, is
Mm-hmm.
how do you bring more of that? So tell me what you do organizationally to ensure that you're hearing the voice of lived experience and bringing that into kind of the chambers for lawmakers to hear as well.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that we did recently is we started an advisory committee, which is just for people with developmental disabilities to be on to help give, me consistent feedback on everything. We're still working on getting, more people on that committee. In terms of just going out and talking to people in the community, AT users and other people with developmental disabilities, that's definitely something I need to do more of as well. Um, But yeah, I think that's the best answer I have. Is I'm still trying to figure out how to go out, and because it's easy to do everything remote and just,
Mhm,
we're right here remote to different spots and things like
mhm.
that. But that's something I'm trying to do a better job at myself, is being more sociable out there in the community, listening to people, you know, not even, having some type of event would be great out there to just get feedback from people, that open house kind of thing. But that's just something I need to continue developing more.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I think, that there was this bill in Arizona, but there was another state as well. Am I remembering that correct? That you had
Mhm.
also. So tell me about that. And somebody actually asked a question about that as well. Like, are you looking to geographically expand beyond Arizona?
Mhm.
You actually are somewhat of a national nonprofit. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Obviously, we're not in every state at this point,
Right. Right.
but the goal when I started 3DA, the idea was to be nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing I did within probably the first year or so is I reached out to all of the state councils on developmental disabilities, because every state has their own board or council, however they want to phrase it, on developmental disabilities. And so the only one that, well, I guess a few of them got back to me, but the only person I really had a good conversation with was Vanessa Blaze from New Hampshire. And ever since then, that was what, 3.5 years ago, probably. Ever since then, we've just been in contact. She had connected me with some other organizations there as well, such as Able New Hampshire, who I've been meeting with consistently on things. And they're kind of in a similar boat as Arizona with. There's not a lot of technology first initiatives
Mm-hmm.
going on. One thing I do want to add that I should have mentioned before is that every state has their own assistive technology program. They're responsible for a few different things. So they help people, get assessed for assistive technology needs. They also loan devices. They also have like a reuse program as well, where a refurbishment program where they help like reuse devices that are no longer needed by someone else. Why I want to mention that is because obviously Arizona has that, New Hampshire has that, but there's still a lot more we can do on the assistive technology side than just those programs. And that's not to the fault of the programs. That it's just that there's just such a wider need than what only they do.
So one of the experiences that I've seen, and I think somebody mentioned it in an earlier comment, but sometimes it's a difficult path for people trying to advocate for assistive technology needs for their children, for example. And I wonder, in the work that you're doing, do you do anything kind of to help, parents, caregivers, or others that might be self advocates that might be trying to advocate for their own assistive technology needs?
Mm-hmm. So I guess the link right here is the best way to point people to, because I'm not, certified to give someone an assistive technology assessment by any means. So I can't.
Sure.
I could point them in the right direction of like, hey, look at this or this, these areas maybe, but I can't, give them the full. Like the state programs can do a much better job than I.
So you're talking about the link that Courtney put up, that is
Yeah.
the 3da.org/state-resources. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of good resources for there. So if people
Yes.
are in a given state, they can go find their state and find resources in their state
Yeah.
that might help them to advocate for that.
And the link specifically would be the state AT programs
Okay.
on that page.
Okay.
You'll be able to find your state's AT program, be able to do that. And
Gotcha.
I'm sorry, the second half of your questions totally slipped my mind.
Oh, well, now that you ask it, I think I've lost it too. I think the main thing I was trying to get at with the question is just, how you might advise, parents or caregivers or self-advocates to advocate for their own needs when it comes to assistive technologies. I've known, for example, a lot of families who have advocated for AAC, or augmented alternative communication devices, for example, and had nothing but pushback, of difficulty kind of making the case, whether it be to their school or otherwise, to get that kind of support. So I guess I was really just after if there was, anything that you offer in terms of guidance to families, or, and I guess that's a question. I'm like, do you support individuals as well? Do people reach out to you as well?
Yeah, so one thing that all parents should know, or just everyone should know, is that under IDA of 2004, every student with an IEP is required to be considered for assistive technology on at least an annual basis, if not more often. And if there's a need that's been proven, then they're supposed to be supplied with not only the assistive technology, but also the related services. So this would include assessments, trainings, reassessments, that kind of stuff. The issue that happens with that is it's not always enforced. Obviously, that's the thing with federal policies, across whatever category you want to look at. But sometimes the state doesn't enforce it well, or sometimes a specific school district won't enforce it the best.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard that example with AACs down here in Arizona, where one school district, their AT specialist, one of their AT specialists was telling me about like how their school district is, they do a great job with the district themselves supports, the need for AT and all this kind of stuff. And then there's another school district, which just the town over is denying students their right to an AAC device.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've heard even in instances where someone's AAC device will be turned off when their parent picks them up.
Right,
So
right.
that's
And never come out of the backpack, never come out of the desk,
Yeah.
They don't have staff that have training adequately to help support the student. There's a whole lot of things that can happen with that.
Yeah, and I guess just speaking of the staff support part, that's another thing too, is a lot of not just teachers in general, but special education teachers, not all of them are taught about assistive technology in their college curriculum.
Right.
That's an issue because AT is going to make the student's life easier, which makes their life easier in some regards.
Yeah, there's still a lot of gaps in higher ed. And I guess there's only so many things that you can fit into a program, right? But I think there's a lot of gaps in higher ed. And certainly when it comes to disabilities and assistive technologies and so many of these areas, there's a lot of progress. And that's another place where, legislation may come into play at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So looking forward, given some of the things that you've been working on, kind of related to legislation, but related to assistive technologies as a whole, what are some of your goals for the future? What is 3DA hoping to do kind of moving forward? Are you hoping to see more states introducing laws, or what are some of the goals that you have here for the future?
Yeah, it's really to improve a wide range of assistive technology stuff on a state-by-state basis. Part of that's technology first. It's not just that. There's other things to look at too, such as like statutes. Obviously, under federal law, states are supposed to already be abiding to, kind of what I talked about, the assistive technology in classrooms. So kind of looking at what state statutes need more of that AT usage, or what part of Department of Education needs to be, enforcing or pushing for more AT in the classrooms, in a positive way, obviously that is. That's a big part of it. I think just in terms of advocacy, looking at what gaps exist with assistive technology and access to it on a state-by-state front, which is a very broad way, but there's obviously a lot of little niches and stuff to look into with that. And I think on the resource side, just continuing to not just provide resources we have, but also to research, dig deeper into what, one thing that kind of interests me that I haven't done a good enough job at looking at is what AT policies exist in other parts of the world. So what other countries have for assistive technology policies, Obviously the US is going to be very ahead in that regard because we've had the AT Act since 1988, and it's been reauthorized, 4 or 5 times since then. Not every country has that, but kind of seeing what other countries are doing well that maybe we can incorporate one little tidbit of that here.
Right. Didn't you tell me you just talked to somebody in Australia or somewhere else around some of these issues?
Yeah. So that was an assistive technology company, and they're just in Australia right now, trying to get to New Zealand, eventually here. But they had shared, I hadn't read it yet. They had sent me a document of the funding model there. So that's a big part of the policy too, is being able to fund and pay for the assistive technology itself.
Gotcha. So I know in addition to kind of the priority area of assistive technology, you also at 3DA do work around legal rights. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, absolutely. So a big part of that special education, obviously the AT part kind of falls under that too, as I just talked about a few times, but also looking at just different statutes and what states don't have a good enough job with doing. Part of that is seclusion and restraint. We're trying to get that work going in Florida. That's a big part of our advocacy efforts, I guess, that we're working on for next year. But just, trying to inform parents and people about special education policies, also case law, as I touched on very beginning of this, we do have a lot of court cases on our website
Mm-hmm.
that you can read on, use as proof in IEP meeting if you need to, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And any kind of goals in that area in terms of things that you're hoping to accomplish in that area of legal rights?
Yeah, I definitely want to catch on the advocacy side. I really want that to be caught up with the AT side. I
Mm-hmm.
think AT side, talk about, oh, we have bill here, we have bill there. We're not quite at that part with special education or other parts of legal rights yet. So we're trying to like catch that up on the advocacy side. Because on the resource side, we have, I don't know the exact numbers, but they're pretty even in that regard.
Mm-hmm. I just want to pause for a second, and anybody that's watching live, if you have questions or comments, you're free to put those in the chat, whether you're on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook, and we see those here. And I notice Brian just said hello. Good to see you, Brian, educator, and good to have you here. I had somebody else asking here kind of about your impact and kind of like the impact that you're making there, and they were kind of asking about what kind of measurable impact you've had in the last 12 months. Obviously you put forward legislation, but are there other things that you look at as kind of the impact of what you're doing there at 3DA?
Yeah, I would say legislation, as you said, that is kind of the main part. And although we haven't like fully accomplished that goal at this point, that is part of, I would say, accomplishment, or however you want to define that. But also, we have a lot of website traffic that's just continuing to grow. I think we have like 1,500 people a month on our website looking at stuff, just across the world in general, which is good. Obviously, I want to see that number, continue to grow, double, triple, 10x, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Those are like I would say the two best metrics to use with our variables. Obviously, I want there to be a lot more than there is right now, but I have to just keep pushing to get those results.
Right. So, you started this not long after you got graduated from college. As you mentioned, you're a small organization. You don't have funding to fund staff right now. So you've got a job that kind of helps you to pay your bills. And this is something you're really passionate about. I mean, there are not many people that I know that are your age or even much older than you that are running small nonprofits kind of on the side of all the things they're doing. This is something that takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. What keeps you coming back? What compels you? Because this is, again, I mean, I really appreciate that this is something that, you've kind of been on a mission to do and has been important to you. And I'd love to see, 3DA grow and, that you're able to kind of support, not only yourself as a staff member, but hopefully grow to support a team. What keeps you going here, and what's your hope for the future?
Yeah, well, our mission statement is giving a voice to every individual with a developmental disability. And I feel like we haven't accomplished that yet. So that's definitely what brings me back, is we haven't, impacted every life that we've been, that we're able to at this point. So, and that's something that I'll take my whole lifetime to accomplish, but I'll, fight like hell to make that happen. So that's really what brings me back. And obviously the priorities and things have their own little logistical things too, but that's the biggest picture to look at.
Gotcha. And if you looked for opportunities for grants or other types of funding that might help you to do, projects at a state or local level to continue to increase the accessibility of assistive technologies? It seems like there should be, I mean, I think about this hypothetically, and it seems like, gosh, there should be dollars out there that people would be willing to, invest in the future of people. Have you had any luck, or have you done any exploration in that area?
Yeah, we've looked at grants. We've had multiple interns that have helped look at grants.
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, trust me, when it comes to grants, I mean, I've never been told no so much in my life. You think you're making progress. You're like, hey, let's apply for this grant. And you put a whole lot of effort into it and only find out that, they wanted a bigger organization, a smaller organization. I feel like it's never quite the right match, but it is something that can be pretty time consuming. Talk to me about interns. So, you're a small organization, but you've supported some interns over time. Do you have a kind of an active internship program if people are interested in getting involved?
Yeah, so we do have an internship program. All of our positions are like volunteer roles. So they're only doing 10 hours a week for 12 weeks. We have a spring group, which I actually just finished hiring for, which is exciting. And then we have a summer group, and then we have a fall group that's concluding this week. So they go 12 weeks. We have different positions. So we have a legal rights position that's basically like the pre-law type position, or people that are in law school. So they research court cases, they do policy research, that kind of stuff. We have an assistive technology research position where they research different AT related stuff. We also have just a general research position. We last year started kind of piloted like a review journal, which is kind of a comprehensive journal of all the trends, literature, all that kind of stuff that's happened in our 2 priorities. So we had interns for that this fall and over the summer, which that review journal should be done in the next month or so and out there, which will be great, which will highlight all the stuff that we were able to collect from this year in terms of data collection, research, academia, that kind of stuff. So that's another position, is a research position. And then we also have a journalist position, which helps interview people in the field. You were actually interviewed by our very first journalist intern. I just remember that.
Yeah. I remember that as well. Yep.
Yeah, no, Antonio did great with that. And then I'm spacing on another position. Oh, yeah, and we have marketing.
Gotcha. And if somebody was interested in an internship type of position, how would they learn more about it?
Yeah, we have an internship page on the website. I'm not remembering the exact link by heart.
Okay.
I think it's just internship.
Gotcha. Yeah, actually, under Get Involved, it looks like I've got the site open up in another window here, and it looks like you've got Join Us, Advisory Committee's internship program, and Donate. So if people are interested in getting involved, they go to the website. Underneath that tab, they can find out more information about how they can get involved in supporting you. Are there other ways that people might support the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, as we were just talking about, donating is always helpful. Even contacting us if you have, questions. I don't care if it's a big question, a small question, something I can answer in a minute, something that'll take me a week to think about. Please reach out on the Contact Us page. It's always good for myself and for 3D8 is for us to connect with more people, regardless of where you are in the world or country. Definitely just contact us. See how we can help. See how we can work together. We've done some collaborative stuff with different organizations on our website for videos or interviews for articles, that kind of stuff. We really just want to help promote people that are in the same scope of work that we are, and just really work together to positively, change the world, because we're all in this together. That was cliche, but we're all in this field of work to make a difference in it. So I think the more people together, the better.
Gotcha. Well, and I just brought up your website, just kind of scrolling through it so people can go check it out. And of course, that's 3da.org. So easy to remember. Nice short address too. You don't get many of those anymore. But here you can come and learn. You can learn about the legislation, which is great because people that are looking to bring bills forward in other states, you can come look at what they've done. But there's lots of information here, as I mentioned, underneath the Get Involved. You can find out information about making donations or joining their internship program. So definitely check them out. A lot of good content as well. I know the articles that you guys have produced. So just encourage people to go and check you out and learn more about what you're doing. So with that, we're kind of reaching the end of our time here, and just want to give you an opportunity if there's any final thoughts or words you want to share with our audience here. Anything about what you're doing, or anything just inspirational. I mean, I'm I got to say, Sam, I mean, I'm inspired by your the time and commitment that you put into this. Again, you kind of started this after an experience, and this, as you've said, is about changing the world. You could just be focused on a job making lots of money, and that's one thing, but to be where you are and thinking about how you can make a difference in the world, I really respect that. I think it's really needed. So any final thoughts you want to share with us as we wrap up today?
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I don't know if I have any last thoughts. I kind of touched on the donate or contact us. But yeah, I guess just to emphasize, feel free to reach out, contact us. I'm also on LinkedIn. I just want to make as many positive connections that can be impactful. Just to learn more, go to 3da.org, as Guy just showed. The website is a bit of a layout there. We have over 250 articles that you can read. You can get lost in different loops, I'm sure, in that. But feel free to just go on 3da.org. Contact us if you have any questions. I'm sure there's a lot of questions after this, which is good. I just want to thank everyone for watching today. I really do appreciate everyone's time and just energy And the questions that were asked during this as well is great, and all the greetings from all over the world is amazing. So just thank you all again for this chance to speak before you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great to have you join me again. We've been connected for some time, and it's usually quite a bit of time between the time we book these and the time they happen. Probably about a year, because we typically are booking about a year in advance. So I know it's been a while since we've last chatted, but pleasure to see you. I appreciate you. I appreciate the things you're doing and the time that you spent with us today. We're going to go ahead and wrap up and say goodbye to everybody and thank them for joining us. I want to ask you if you would just stick around for one more second here after the show. I just want to give you one more thank you. But for those that were watching live, again, huge thanks to you. Appreciate you being part of our community. Appreciate you coming here and supporting the work that we do. I encourage you, become a member, join, donate if you're able. But thank you all for being here. So with that, we're going to say goodbye. And Sam, just stick around for a second, and we'll see everybody else next time. Take care.